Hey, good morning. Good morning, Christ City Church. Good to see you all. Hey, I see. Good. Wait back. Yeah, why not? Kiddos, how you feeling? I know a lot of the charter schools start school on Monday. Ooh, yeah, yays and boos. I feel that. You know, you can hold two emotions at once. And then DC Public Schools, they start back next Monday. So kiddos and parents and teachers and folks connected with the school systems, we're praying for you and cheering you on as you start another season, and just your heroes, all of you. My name is Matthew. I serve as one of the pastors here at Christ City. If I haven't had a chance to meet you, thank you for joining us. Listen, I want you to know that your presence here this morning, your voices as I'm hearing you sing and pray, your collective prayers, the things that you have prayed here, the community that you've already displayed here, it's a faithful protest. It's a celebratory reminder that we can cultivate joy even in the midst of challenging seasons. So I don't want you to take lightly that you've just shown up here. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you not just for showing up here, but in all of the places, even just this past week, where the Christ City Church community has shown up on behalf of each other and on its neighbors. I can't begin to enumerate all of the ways, but I do want to speak to a few of them. A few of the ways that this church is showing up just this week and displaying the character of God. I've been on text threads with a number of you where you're checking in on each other. Ways that you've been praying for each other this week. Places where you've made your voices heard in protests and prayer walks that are currently being planned, and donations that you've made for under-resourced schools that are just right outside this door. You've checked in on unhoused neighbors this week. You've encouraged neighbors returning from incarceration this week who are working to change their lives. Teen City members have helped launch one of their own to college this week. And that's just this week. There's a lot of news this week that highlights news of oppression and the work of dismantling communities and families and decency. But in the face of that, Christ City Saints, you've been about the work of God. Quietly, powerfully, consistently. And I don't want you to look past these consistent and faithful works that you're doing, because it is just these kinds of daily rhythms of love and justice and resistance that turn the tides of seasons and erode kingdoms built on oppression and hatred. It's the drips of water and the flows of brooks and the meandering streams that cut stones and reshape landscapes. And it's the consistent faithfulness of saints like yourselves that will bend the future toward one that displays God's flourishing in this city. So don't walk past it, saints. Let's notice together. I say this after a week like this, all weeks, that it is a joy to gather in this spot and to remember God's love towards us and to celebrate God's love for us in Christ and to celebrate the ways that we have seen and experienced the love of God displayed in the lives of folks around us that are faithful and following Jesus, that are the hands and feet and voices and presence of Jesus. So again, all that to say, thank you for being here. And as you show up here, that's what that means. And as you show up outside of here, that's also displays of the kingdom that we just sang about. Amen? Amen. I want to ask you a question. So here's the deal. Everybody in this room has a parent or a grandparent or some parental figure that has been in your life. Now, I know that many of us, were raised in different various family settings and situations, but whatever our backgrounds, we didn't show up in this world as full-grown humans. I like to tease, my kids always tease me about my beard because they look back at like I started growing facial hair in junior high, and I just tell them, I came out of the womb with a beard. And they're like, I don't think that's true, but I don't have a picture of you without it. But all that to say, you didn't show up here as a full-grown human. I think about that all of us have had a parent or a parental figure, grandparent, somebody in you that kind of helped raise you. So here's my question to you. That said, think about something that you do, that you currently do now, and it's the way that your parents or your grandparents did that same thing. What is that thing? You got it? And when did you first notice yourself doing it? So I want you to think about what is the thing that you do that your mom, your dad, your grandma did. Maybe it's, I was thinking about this the other day. I fold bath towels the weird way that my mom folds bath towels. And it's not like, I'm like, why am I folding this complicated way? What is it for you? Just shout it out. What is the thing that you do that's like your parents did? Clean up the kitchen. They're like a process you got? You follow? Okay. What was it over here? Sugar in your grits? Oh, man, y'all about to, there's somebody else. Somebody want to say that's wrong? Raise your hand on the side. I see you back there. Y'all can sort it out later. Well, other things. Bird watching. Didn't know that. I learned something today about my wife. Bird watching. Great. Perfect. 25 years. You never know. Year before last, you know what I learned? She doesn't put ketchup on her French fries. And I was like, when did you start doing that? She's like, my whole life. I said, how about I notice this? Anyway, thank you. Thanks for that. Praise God. Love you. Something else over here. What's that? Watch the anime that my dad watches. Love that. That's discipleship right there. Good. Good. Other things that you do that you do it because your parents did it. Yeah. My boyfriend says my mom and I make the same face when we're in the photo. Yes. I love that. I love that. That's right. Expressions, mannerisms, ways that you walk. Overcommit. I love that. Got it. There's all these things that we do, and we do them like they were passed on to us. I don't know, nature, nurture, like, yes, all of that and the ways that we have certain things. I don't know when I first realized this. I think it was sometime after college. I was living in California at the time, and I realized that whenever I'm done visiting with somebody or I'm done with a phone call, that I would end it the same way that my grandmother, Ruby Loretha, would end it. And I'll end it with a single word. I'll say, well. And that means it's either time for you to go, it's time for me to go, but we got to go. It's not like, hey, good talking to you. It's not like any kind of concluding word. I'll just be on the phone and then just, well, I'm gone, and that's it. That's what's passed on to me. Like our families of origin, they shape us. But also, unfortunately, they can misshape us. We're in week 6 of 8 in our sermon series entitled Life Together. And the aim of this series has been to provide a set of anchor points for us as a church in understanding how do we navigate relationships of all kinds and stripes, friendships, romantic relationships, platonic friendships, conflicted relationships. How do we navigate those? And we want to understand how to form relationships of significance and how to mend relationships. And ultimately, how do our relationships reflect the love that God has towards us and towards others? I mentioned this a few weeks ago when Lisa and I preached together, and to reiterate the point, part of the beauty of Christ City is that we're a diverse congregation. We're diverse racially, ethnically, generationally, even theologically to a degree. The strength of this can also be the shadow side, especially in a world that seems so bent on disintegrating community. And the question that we're seeking to answer, the questions that we're seeking to answer, is how do we build trust and sustain across differences as a community of faith rooted in Jesus? How do we sustain friendships? How do we raise kids and honor our parents and simply stay grounded in the God-honoring love when everything seems intent to pull us apart? Our anchoring verse for this series has been a passage out of Romans 12, where the Apostle Paul, writing to the church in Rome, he says, we have many parts in one body. But the parts, they don't all have the same function. In the same way, though there are many of us, we are one body in Christ. And individually, we belong together. This verse and so many of the sermons in this series already, they remind us that real community honors differences as essential, not accidental. And the body needs all the parts and nobody is expendable. And this morning, we want to explore relationships across generations. We want to give a bit more consideration in how our parents and parental figures have shaped our approach to relationships, how that's a strength, but also how that can harm. And we want to know where we can pass on faithfulness and flourishing to those that come after us, and where the harder edges of our ancestors and the implications can stop with us. So to help us with this, we've asked a good friend of our church and many of us in the room, we've asked Pete Bauman to join me for a bit of a conversation. This will be similar to how we asked Dr. Marissa Franco to share with us a couple weeks ago. So this morning, I want to invite Pete Bauman on, if we can welcome him.
Good morning, everyone.
Pete is a friend of Christ City. He's a clinical social worker, a former pastor. He works at Garden City Center, which is where he sees adult individuals. Garden City Center is the counseling agency that offices out of our Christ City offices. Pete's spiritual and family life have helped ground his work, and he actively participates in a contemplative prayer group weekly. He's led such gatherings online and in churches. He's married, and a dad. So glad that you're here, man. Thank you for carving out some time. And just want to kind of give some questions to you to maybe kind of help us think about this issue of how do we have healthy relationships across generations. The passage that we read earlier from Psalm 78 in our liturgy, it's a passage that echoes this notion of passing down a spiritual and emotional and familial heritage. And so when you think about that idea as a counselor, as a Christian, as a therapist, how do you see that happening, the passing down?
Yeah. Before I answer that, I just want to say I've watched this community, not in a creepy way. That sounds kind of creepy, but from afar, I'm just aware of who y'all's leadership is, the values that y'all have, the way y'all live out those values, and I have a lot of respect for this community. My wife does too. So I feel really honored and privileged to be here, even a little intimidated to be here talking about this morning. But yeah, back to the question. So when it comes down to the passing of spiritual heritage, kind of from my lens as a therapist, so children are wired neurobiologically to form their God image based off their early experiences with their parents. Or parental figures. I'm going to say parents a lot. I mean anyone in the caregiving role today. But the reason this happens is because the relationship with the parent is the way that a child comes to expect and experience the qualities of God in the universe later on in life. So whatever the qualities are in that relationship between child and parent when the child's young, they are going to automatically assume that's what God in the universe is like. So if that relationship is full of things like kindness, compassion, love, inclusivity, the child will naturally assume God's going to be that way. The flip side, if that relationship is full of, coldness, unfeeling, unacceptance, rejection, quickness to anger, that type of thing, the child will naturally assume that of God also as they grow up. Luckily, the way our brains are wired is those aren't static, they can change, but yeah, that's how things get formed early on, and how I see spiritual heritage being passed on from when children are really young through word and deed, but also just through the way the relationship is. Yeah.
That maybe just a follow-up question of that, as a parent, there's a weight to that. Mm-hmm. What would you say to parents that are like, man, goodness gracious, so when I lose my temper, all of a sudden my kids are going to be like, oh, so God is angry? What kind of, how do I navigate that as a dad that I think there might have been one time where I lost, I'm sure, I can't think of it now, but probably was impatient once a long time ago. How would you, what kind of encouragement would you offer me?
Yeah, so when it comes to encouragement, so I think something important to realize here, and this is something that's been big for me both as a therapist and as a parent, is that when it comes to the broken parts that are passed on, the traits and behaviors that we find to be so bothersome, that we find intolerable, that we can react to with anger, just we're all of a sudden in a negative, intense feeling reaction, almost not by our choosing, we're just in it. The reason those traits and behaviors can be so bothersome is because they're usually actually parts of ourselves that we have rejected and repressed from our own childhood. Another way to say that would be that what was rejected and not tolerated in us when we were children, we will naturally proceed to reject and not tolerate in our children once we're parents. Oftentimes, though, we don't actually usually realize this is what's happening. Usually, like unconsciously, we just assume whatever behavior launched us into this negative reaction was wrong, inappropriate, shouldn't be here, that we're reacting correctly. But in actuality, usually the behavior's developmentally appropriate, and we're actually reacting to something in our past. And I have a story I thought I might share to help illustrate this, like from my own role as a parent, to illustrate and unpack how this happens. And so I have a daughter named Ava. She's 3.5. I've been told she is watching this, so I want to say hello, Ava. Also, I'm using her like car iPad, and it's the only iPad in the house, and she was not excited that I was bringing it here. So Ava, I'm sorry I have your iPad, but I will bring it home. So this moment happened several months ago. She was 3. We're in the middle of a park. Her like best friend's there. They're playing. It's almost dinner time, so I'm like, Ava, we're going to set a timer. She agrees to this. We're going to set a timer. When the timer goes off, we're going home. Complete agreement. Fast forward 5 to 10 minutes later, timer goes off, and like all hell breaks loose on this playground. Like I'm talking like huge tears, crying, like blood curdling scream, like ear piercing, like, you know, like I am sure there was like not one person on the playground who didn't hear this. It was that loud. Maybe they thought I was like assaulting her or hurting her. I wasn't touching her. The timer went off. She loses it. And like all of a sudden, like because of this angry outburst she's having, the non-compliance, like I find myself in this reaction where I like feel, because other parents are watching too, and I know they hear it, like I feel the blood rush up my neck into my head. My muscles and my arms, my shoulders, my neck get tense, and like all this energy is rising in me, and it is like, stop this behavior as quickly as possible and by any means possible. And I don't remember what I said, but I'm sure it was not in a nice tone, like, Ava, why are you screaming? You knew we had a timer. This was going to happen. Like, stop, or I am not going to take you to parks anymore. Like, really ugly, not good parenting moment. And this is what I mean by like behaviors that can launch us into negative, intense reactions. Like usually it's like either we're aggressively assertive, like in this moment, sometimes it's like, I'm going to push you away and withdraw, whether internally or externally, just because I can't deal with this. Usually we don't feel like we have control over them. Like we're just in them. And Ava at that age, she was having more and more angry outbursts, pushing boundaries, not complying to things. And so this kept on happening. And without reflection, it was really easy for me to just assume my feelings were right. This behavior shouldn't be here. It needs to go away quickly. But because these things started happening more and more, and I was having this reaction, I started to do some exploration with my therapist, realized some big things. First, I was reminded that behaviors like that are completely normal for 3-year-olds. Like I knew that, but like it was helpful to be reminded of that because it's really hard to remember that in the moment. And then the second was I remembered through my work that when I was little and I had angry outbursts or wasn't complying, like my parents did not tolerate it. And to say they didn't tolerate it, that's kind of putting it lightly. Like when I was doing those things, like that behavior was extinguished quickly through very explosive anger, harsh punishment, and pretty severe yelling. And so that happened enough times as a kid to me that what happened is I unconsciously repressed that part of myself because I learned that it was unacceptable. And this is a protective strategy children will do. It's built in. If they learn that a behavior or trait is unacceptable to their parents, they're going to hate it in themselves, deny it, shut it down, reject it, because it risks disconnection and rejection from their parents. And so that's what happened to me. Fast forward to parenthood, and that part of me that's repressed, that like learned that these kinds of behaviors are unacceptable, is now reacting to and rejecting that same behavior in my daughter in the same way through anger of my own. And so what's at risk here is that if I keep on doing this, my daughter is going to learn to reject and repress this part of herself too, just like happened to me. And all sorts of problems happen when that happens. Like when we shut down parts of ourselves, it leads to all sorts of things: anxiety, depression, self-esteem. A lot of the things I work with as a therapist, like I find tied to these parts of ourselves that we've disowned. And then to add on top of that, talking about spiritual heritage being passed down, if I keep on reacting to these things, these emotional outbursts that my daughter has, like she will learn that and assume that in moments, God is quick to anger, mean, unfeeling, unaccepting, and obviously that's not what I want. That's not what any of us want for our children. Unfortunately, this seems to be par for the course of parenting. Like we pass down what was passed down to us unconsciously. I want to be clear, it does not mean we are bad parents. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with us. What it means is there's parts of us that were hurt, shut down, repressed, and they're still there, and they need care, the same care that our children are needing. So, yeah, that was a long way to answer.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And thanks for sharing the story of it. One of the pieces that I hear in that is that it also kind of that event, maybe not just that event, but that season of parenting, that it triggered a journey of kind of understanding and healing that you begin to walk through. What might be a journey that we as adults need to take so as to not repeat the broken parts of our family of origin?
Yeah, definitely. So once we can see this, right? Once we can see how brokenness is being passed down in our own families, how our wounds are now possibly wounding our children. Like, I know everything I've said right now seems really like a bummer, but when we can see it, we are so many opportunities for healing and growth that are incredibly beautiful, like are open to us. And so both for ourselves as parents and for the child. And so the first is for our parents, like when we can see that this has been happening, that there are parts of ourselves that are repressed that are now leading to rejection of our children, like similar parts in our children. That is like a spot where we can find healing for our own childhood wounds and to reconnect and reclaim those parts of ourselves that were rejected and repressed when we were younger. And so what this looks like to walk in that type of feeling, what that journey looks like, is like there's two main parts. This is very general, easier said than done, but two main parts. Like one is like figuring out what happened, like what happened to us that led to that rejection, that repression of those parts of ourselves. The second part is then figuring out what do they need now that they deserved back then but didn't get, if that makes sense. And that's where the healing comes in. And this can be done. It's hard to do it on your own. I would say it's better in relationship, whether that's a marriage partner, a friend who is emotionally mature and intimate and committed, a therapist. I'm not just saying that because I'm a therapist, although anyone at Garden City Center would love to work on you with, if this is like something you're wanting to explore, we would love to do that. But not required. It can be done in other relationships. But for me, the big one was my therapist being able to explore what happened in my past, how it's present in the present in what's going on, and finding that healing. So that's one opportunity that's presented, is our own healing. And the second is that as we start our own healing, we can then learn how to not pass on that brokenness to our children, how to stop wounding them in the same ways we were wounded, how to not reject in them what was rejected in us. And what this looks like is we do need to start our own healing, I would say, because if we don't, those knee-jerk reactions will keep on happening. But once those are we understand what's going on in those more, what this looks like is welcoming those traits and behaviors we've previously found to be intolerable in our children and letting them be there and be understood. Because when we can make room for our children in that way, they're learning that they don't have to repress that part of themselves or to reject it, because it doesn't risk disconnection or rejection from parents anymore. And in doing that, the child would learn to know that they are safe and free to be themselves and to express themselves fully. And that's what we want. We want our children to feel safe and free, yeah, to be themselves and to express themselves fully.
Maybe if I can ask, again, another follow-up to that. What, as you think about, like if we could go back to that example that you gave us on the playground, having gone through the journey that you've gone through, how would you handle that differently? And maybe what I'm asking is also like, what are some tools or approaches, like practically some steps to take to address the things that we want to maybe not pass on, or things that we do want to pass on, kind of different approaches to engagement? So
yeah,
take
totally.
Take us back to the playground. Rerun it. How would you do it?
So there's a tool that I'll share. It's called intentional dialogue. And I'll share what that would look like with my daughter on that playground. And something really important here is it's not like just like whatever tool or how we talk. It's more like our stance and our posture and our energy toward our children. We don't want to shape or control. That's not the goal isn't to shape or control our children or the behavior. It's to be curious, warm, loving, to understand why is the behavior here. Because these behaviors that are like bothersome or trouble behaviors, there's always good intent beneath them. And when we can understand that by letting them be there and connecting with it, that's when those behaviors can be expressed maybe in different ways. But so all that to say, stance, posture, and energy is really important. So I would need to make sure I was calm in that moment, which I was not calm. But if I had a redo, so I would use this tool called intentional dialogue. It's 3 parts. The first step is mirroring. And so if I was able to be calm, my daughter was able to talk to me. She might need to be regulated. But after that, I would mirror, which is just reflecting back to the child what we think their behavior is communicating or what they're like telling us with their words. And so
when you say regulated, what is that? Because my dad regulated, but I don't think he did it the way you were thinking. So what do you mean by regulate?
Well, obviously I tried something that was not regulating in that moment too. I was actually trying to regulate myself. But regulate is like just getting them back to a calm state where they feel safe. You know, that's what we want to get to. With little kids, that's like holding, rubbing back, that kind of thing. Older kids, you can ask them. But younger kids, you can ask too, but sometimes they don't know, so you have to help them out with that. But yeah, so if she was regulated and I was regulated, I would mirror, I would reflect back to her. I might say like, Ava, it seems like you're really upset right now. Is that right? She would probably say, yeah. If she didn't, like I would like just ask something else like, oh, I'm wondering if you're feeling sad or mad right now because you're crying, you're screaming. That's what it seems like to me. And if she says yes, I would say, oh, okay. So why are this? Like, what happened that made you feel mad or sad? So just continuing to reflect back. She might say, we have to go home. If they are having a hard time putting it together, especially like when they're 3, it might be harder. I would say, oh, I'm wondering. Daddy said we had to go home. You were having fun with your friend. Is that what made you feel mad or sad? She would probably say yes. And then I would say, yeah, I'm understanding that. Is there anything else? You know, and you want to, when you're mirroring, and you can use this with children that are older too, but when you're mirroring, you want to make sure you're getting it. So constantly coming back to like, oh, is there anything else that I'm not getting? If she says that's it, I would say something like, okay, like you're mad, you're sad because I said we had to go. That's mirroring. The next step is validating. So it's assuring the child that what they're feeling makes sense in the context of what they think. So we're putting our perspective aside because sometimes we will not agree with what is happening with our children. And so we put our perspective aside where we want to know their perspective and to say it makes sense, basically. And so I would say something like, you're here at the park with your best friend. Daddy said we had to go home. You really, really don't want to go home. No wonder you're feeling mad and sad that the timer went off. So that's validating. And then after validating, it's empathy. So mirroring, validating, empathy. Empathy is just connecting with the emotion of the child in the moment, in the story that they're telling. And so this can be like if you actually feel it. Like I found if I'm calm and I'm listening to my daughter share these things, that I actually start feeling what she's feeling. Or you can just imagine if you were in their shoes what you might feel. And so for validating or for empathy, I would say something like, yeah, I can feel your sadness. I can feel your anger. When daddy is hanging out with his friends and then I have to go all of a sudden, like that makes me feel mad and sad too sometimes. So yeah, I'm feeling you're mad and you're sad right now with you. And that's it. Like that's like the mirror, validate, empathy. You make that connection, and then from there, if there's room for like apologies, if that needs to happen, or if there needs to be some sort of behavior change request, or if there's like biting, hitting, that kind of thing, or if there is a, what I was just going to say just left me. But yeah, or if there's room for like, oh, what would you need now to help you feel better? You know, like after we go through this, Ava usually wants a hug. You know, that's like kind of like the end of that. And so, yeah, it's a simple tool. It can kind of feel clunky and formal at first, which it did for me, but like I like use this like every day with my daughter when there's distress or rupture in the relationship or one of these behaviors that I have a hard time with sometimes. Yeah.
So, thank you for that. And I appreciate you kind of sharing a bit of vulnerability about your own experience with, on the playground. No, we spent a bunch of time. We spent a good bit of time talking about parents or parental figures and their work with children. But how do we kind of look up the generational chain? What steps or tools should we be familiar with as we continue to care for our, as we're adults, but still our parents' children? How do we care for our parents as adult children? What would be some tools or ways, even as we're continuing our own journey of healing and understanding?
Yeah. So obviously, taking care of our parents as adults can be a lot of work, like especially if we have kids, but not even if we don't have kids. Like it's a lot of work. And I know like on our call when we were preparing for this, we were talking about how, sometimes we're learning what we need for ourselves as we are continuing in that relationship and taking care of our parents and learning how to communicate those needs in a loving and respectful way, because we want that relationship to flourish and be one that we can like be in and pull from and give, but also like, as we're older, we have our own lives, and so we're needing to learn how to, know what we need and then know how to communicate that. And so a tool that I found helpful when it comes to like navigating moments like these where we're needing to communicate needs in the parental relationship, like our parents, it's a tool called nonviolent communication. If you Google it, I'll go over the steps quickly, but like if you Google it, you'll find a lot of information about it. I've used it in my own life with my own parents, and I use it with clients a lot when we're trying to figure out like what it is they need, maybe what a boundary they're needing to set, that kind of thing. And so in nonviolent communication, there's 4 parts. It's observation, feelings, needs, and then request. And so this is kind of like it guides in sharing, either if you're talking face-to-face or like an email or a letter, that type of thing. But the first piece is stating an observation, which is like the objective reality of however the relationship is, or like a moment happened or whatever happened, or however something is, like objectively stating the observation of it, one that like can't be disputed. Like it's just, this is how things are. So that's observation. The second step is feelings, and this is how it made you feel, like the observation, like whatever happened. And so it's important here not to use like you language, like this happened and you do this, or you don't do this, or I feel like you do this, or I feel like you don't do this. It's more keeping it on ourselves. So like this happened and I felt angry, I felt sad, hurt, I felt disregarded, inconsidered, whatever it may be. So observations, feelings. The next part is needs. So this is in the relationship moving forward, or maybe it's specific situations depending on the situation. It's what you need, or like what I need to feel safe and free to be myself in the relationship. Physical safety, emotional safety, all of that. Like what we need, what we're realizing we need in the relationship. And then the last part is request, which is how the other party, in this case our parents, can help us meet those needs. And so that's the flow: observation, feelings, needs, requests. And then obviously we can't control whether or not the other party meets our requests, but if they don't, maybe that's where a boundary or a limit needs to come in. That would be different based off different situations. But it's a tool to help communicate it in a way where it keeps the feeling language on ourselves. It's not attacking or accusatory, but it's a way to like do it respectfully and lovingly and say like, I want this relationship. I'm just realizing I'm feeling this way and I need these things in the relationship for it to get forward, or for maybe it's specific situations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's helpful. I remember one of the first times I tried this with an elder in my family, and I appreciate your word about sometimes you're using some of these tools that can feel a little bit clunky, because I remember the family were looking at me like, "What are you doing? Why are you talking to me crazy like this?" And I'm like, "Well, these are my feelings," and they're like, "Okay, you want to go get tacos? Like, why are you bothering me with it?" So, it took a little bit of time to kind of be like, well, this is what I'm trying to do. Like, I'm trying to, move forward here. But there was a graciousness in it, too. So I appreciate you kind of sharing some of that. We've got time for 2 or 3 questions here. So I want to give you a chance, if you have some questions as it relates to just how to hold healthy relationships, either with your own children or folks that you're a caregiver for, or as you look kind of up the generational chain, as it were, like how to care for folks that are a bit older than you in your family. So if you got a question or two, send them my way. Yeah, Morgan.
How do you deal with relationships where you've done a lot of work, but maybe the parent hasn't done as much work, and so you're trying to start one of these types of processes, and your parents have kind of put up, or elders put up defenses and things like that, or you ask for a boundary or something like that, and the reaction is negative, or I don't think it doesn't matter, I do what I want, that kind of thing. How do you handle that in a caring way with a parent, and also self-regulate as well during the process?
That's a really good question.
The question is, what do you do when you've done a bit of work, but as you're engaging with a family member, particularly an older family member, that they haven't, you're trying to walk through this, it's not met really well, maybe boundaries aren't held to the same care. How do you navigate those kind of stickier situations?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. Those moments are just really hard, so I want to acknowledge that. To navigate, not knowing the situation exactly, I can't speak to specifics, but yeah, when there are, it sounds like boundaries that are being set, that are being either broken or hard to keep set there because, work has been done on your side but not their side. I think it takes a lot of knowing ourselves to know what the exact boundary we need it to be set, if that makes sense, which can be hard to figure out in and of itself. But once we know, this is what I need for this relationship, and if they're continuing to try to push that boundary, it's really hard, but what I would say is the boundary needs to be firm, or as firm as it can be. We can't always control, yes, sometimes people will bypass a boundary. That doesn't mean anything bad about us when we're setting up a boundary. But sticking to that boundary, even if it's really, really hard, if that's what's best for you and your own growth and differentiation and personhood, if that makes sense. And, that is really upsetting. And so, as far as regulation, I don't know, it would kind of depend on what usually helps you, get back to that safe, calm state. But yeah, relationships, usually walking can help us. And then, having people that know why we've set that boundary and can reassure us and support, you're making the right choice, even though it's really, really hard right now.
Let's go. Yeah. Ted?
You both spoke about the clunkiness of getting started with these kinds of processes. What are some of the things that help overcome that clunkiness?
Question was about, in using some of the tools, whether it be nonviolent communication or tools of different forms of regulation, addressing some of the clunkiness when you're working with a relational tool. What are some steps to overcome that?
Yeah. I don't know if you can get past the clunkiness totally. At least so I did this with my daughter when I'm thinking about the intentional dialogue. She probably has, I don't know what she was thinking when I was doing it, because I was like making her talk about her feelings like a lot. I think it feels clunky, like maybe more for ourselves, but hopefully it doesn't come across that way. I would say more like, I think our energy helps, like I would say, like, if I'm like still angry at my daughter or my parents when I'm using one of these tools or a different one, or just like communicating in general, like if it's coming from anger, like the energy is anger, like that's probably gonna make it feel more clunky, because I'm like angry, but I'm also trying to like be open to their feelings kind of thing. So I would say the more that we can feel like calm and like with that goal of like we're wanting to, like with a child, we're wanting to welcome them and give them space to be as they are and feel loved and warm. Like I think even if it does feel clunky on our end, they'll feel that. With parents, I would say if it is the same thing, or just like a elder person, if it feels like our energy is like we want this person to feel loved, but also to know how what they're doing is impacting us, I think they'll get that. Like they won't, even if it does feel a little clunky, I think the energy and the momentum behind it will feel received, if that makes sense. Versus like basically, I think if what we're trying to do matches, like if the motivation matches the words, it may feel clunky, but I think it'll be received. Versus like if it doesn't, like I'm saying this, but like they can tell I'm angry, then that'll not be.
I think maybe one thing that I would add as one that's trying to live into many of the things, whether it be intentional dialogue or healthy conflict and nonviolent communications, with the tools, practice makes progress. Yeah. And I don't want to have this tool and wait for the most absolute intense, conflicted conversation that I've ever been in to then try a new tool. I want to kind of, when it's, the stakes aren't so high, let me practice this with my children, or with my parents, or, partner, or neighbors, or, relationships of meaning for me. So let me practice these tools when the stakes, when the emotions aren't, when I'm not on red, when I'm, when I'm a little bit, all right, let me give this a go. But practice can, so I'll practice those in other spots. It's what's helped for me. Yeah. Maybe one other question. I don't want to neglect my backside. Okay, but I will. So we'll come back over here. Rachel.
I wanted to ask from a both biblical and personal perspective, what does it mean to honor or respect, especially if the model you grew up in, like that model that shaped your people, and you no longer agree with some of those things? What do you want? What are these things they are?
Yeah.
You want to take
Great
the biblical or the clinical?
Yeah.
We can.
And so the question was, how do we honor our parents? From like a biblical, clinical perspective, especially like if there's been hurt. Is that? Oh, yeah. So I'd say at least what comes to my mind is, so there is always, like at the basis of everything, like all action, what parents pass down, I am in full belief that there is always good intention, like always. I think I would even say like sacred, like I think if you get to the root of it, like I think usually it's always like holy, sacred, good intention. Now the actions based off what parents have learned or like what they've been through may not actually come out that way, but I think knowing that and being able to see that and like respect that they were acting in the best way they could and that what their intent was really good, even if like maybe it's not something that we agree with now that we're older. I can honor that all day, the beauty of that, even if I disagree now that I'm an adult and I have my, and that's part of parenting is we want our children to have their own personhood and values and beliefs when they're older, and so, now that I have that on the other side, or we have that on the other side, I think we can honor the intention and hold the actions like lightly. Yeah.
I think that's right. I think that resonates with me. Like, how do I, my motivation as a follower of Jesus is rooted in love. And sometimes it can be loving to say, I honor the intentions, and what is loving is I'm not going to repeat the action. But it comes from a place of care and love, and I think that how that's received is it's not, but at the end of it is, how do I show love? And sometimes love is to say, I appreciate, I respect, I honor, and I'm going to go a different way out of the same love that has motivated me to say, I appreciate and honor and respect you. So, super simplistic, but that's for me. Pete, thank you. Hey, we blew through the time. Can we give Pete an appreciation?
Thank y'all.
I've shared this before. Some of you, I think you all know at this point, many of you know. Well, let me just tell you in case you. I've been on a fitness journey, been boxing, and I've got a fight coming up. You can ask me about it later. My opponent is very big. He's younger than me. He's taller than me. He weighs a lot more than me, and he's stronger than me. And I was talking to my coach, Coach Jolly. I was just kind of like enumerating this. Like, I got to fight this guy like I'm a 50-year-old pastor. I was on the couch like 2 months ago, and now, they got this, Hercules in front of me. He's tall, and I was just enumerating all the things. He's taller, his reach is longer. And I remember like Jolly just like grabbed my shoulders. And he said, listen, you have, just as you are right here, you're going to show up just as you are. You're going to beat this guy. Everything that's a weakness that you just say that is a weakness, we can use it as a strength. You are exactly who you need to be to face this challenge. Now let's get to work. And it was both of those things for me, that I'm exactly who I need to be. I'm the height I need to be. I'm the weight I need to be. I'm as fast as I need to be. I'm the age I need to be. I'm just who I need to be. That just as I am is enough. And there's work to do. Both of those things. I come from this conversation, I'm a parent, and I'm a child of some older parents. That I am always wondering, am I doing enough for my kids? Am I doing enough for the other young people that I'm investing my life in? Am I doing enough as a son whose mom is a widow? Am I enough? And that may be where you are, wondering as a parent or as an adult child of parents, grandparents, folks that you're investing in, folks that you're trying to love that are of a different generation, a different era, different country than where you have come up in. And you're wondering, am I enough? And I just want to bring forward the words of Coach Jolly that would say to you, you are exactly who you need to be. You're enough. Just as you are, standing right here. You're the right size, shape, age, strength, all of it. And there's some work to do. There's some healing to do. Some learning, some understanding, some forgiving, some wholeness doing. That is also our work to do. Both of those things are true at the exact same time. Let me pray for us.